Zionism is normal. Anti-Zionism is insane. And yet everyone questions Zionism rather than questioning anti-Zionism.
Today is Wednesday, April 22nd. This is Boundless Insights, and I'm Aviva Klompas. Happy birthday, Israel. You're 78 years old today, a big number, but in so many ways still a young state. And like last year, this Independence Day doesn't feel entirely celebratory. It's been 2.5 years of a long and painful war that has taken its toll on Israelis and Jewish communities around the world. Right now, there are enemies surrounding your borders and nations committed to your destruction. Across the globe, you're marginalized, demonized, and undermined by institutions, leaders, and peoples. But a day like today invites something else. It asks us to step back, to look beyond the anxiety of the moment and take in the sweep of history. For thousands of years, the idea of a sovereign Jewish state was an improbable dream, one that lived in prayers, in our holidays, and in the imagination of a people scattered across the earth. More than 100 generations of Jews dreamed of a Jewish state, and just 4 generations have lived to see it in the modern day. We are among them. We are the fortunate few who have seen the Jewish people restore their ability to govern themselves, defend themselves, and shape their own future in our ancestral home. And we should never take that for granted. So today, I want to step back from the headlines and think about Israel's centrality to Jewish life, why Zionism is still relevant, and about the growing gap between Israel's reality and how it's understood in the West. And there's no one better equipped to have this conversation with than Dr. Einat Wilf. She's a brilliant thinker, a former member of Israel's parliament, and the founder of a new political party called Oz. Let's get into it. Einat Wilf, fan favorite, welcome back to Boundless Insights for our special Yom Ha'atzmaut episode.
Thank you. Great to be here.
We are going to cover some of the big questions that we often overlook when we're in the day-to-day mess of all the news and headlines. So I want to step back and ask you what is really a big question, and that is, why does a Jewish state matter today?
So one flippant way to answer is, I really like it. I would like to continue living in it. But it is also, I think, an expression of somewhat of exhaustion from the fact that we are constantly bombarded and assaulted with that question on a daily basis, that we find that we need to answer it. But if we go in greater depth, the Jewish state continues to be incredibly important because it remains to this day the only way that has been proven to allow Jews to live as free people and as equal people. And that's the key issue. A lot of people don't understand that in the wake of the fall of empires, that is kind of the big transition of the 19th and 20th century, with the rise of nations, the spring of nations to replace the receding multi-ethnic empires. And the Jews were only proven that they could live, first of all, live, period, and then as free and equal people when they have their own state. And I know that there is a fondness for alternative histories. I think there was a headline in the New York Times recently reviewing someone's book, What is Judaism Without Zionism? I mean, this was a really easy one because people just kind of went it and posted pretty much all the Holocaust imagery in response. But that is actually also a truly deep answer. In the early 20th century, there's a lot of intra-Jewish debate as how two Jews can live as free and equal in the modern era. And there's a lot of responses: communism, Bundism, assimilation, Zionism. And a lot of people find it difficult to reckon with the fact that all the other ideas failed in the most horrible way, that the verdict of history was cruel to the Bundists and their vision of worker utopia, working side by side with their Polish kind of fellow proletariat, and to the Soviet idea and to the assimilation into Europe, and even America. Ultimately, America and the thriving of Jews in America tends to come also very much in line with American support for Zionism and the existence of a Jewish state. So the thing is this: places where Jews thrive as free and equal are either Zion, either the state of Israel, or pro-Zionist.
Inherent in your answer is the notion that we need to look backwards at history to understand what's happening. But what I think people have such a hard time doing is looking forward. Because essentially what you're saying is that there is a depressing inevitability to Jewish life in any place other than Zion or Israel, which says ultimately the country in which you live will turn on you. And I think that's a very hard notion for people to accept.
Absolutely. Certainly, there's a tendency sometimes in Zionist lore to tell it this way. I will put one question mark on this, and that is the question of American exceptionalism, which is a question mark. It's not an answer. When I speak about the rise of anti-Zionism, about the fact that no society, country, organization that turned anti-Zionist ultimately became supportive of Jewish life individually and collectively, and we see it happening in the United States right now. When people ask me, is this arc inevitable? I say, I will put one question mark on the hope that there is something truly different, exceptional about America that will ultimately not allow it to follow in the footsteps of Iran and the Arab world and the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe to the end of the arc of allowing anti-Zionism to ultimately lead to the disappearance and ethnic cleansing of Jewish life.
And you mean the United States in particular, as in distinct from countries like Canada, Australia, and England?
Yes, because the United States still has this notion that it is trying to be a nation bound by a constitution, a nation bound by an idea. And that those ideas, once you create a nation bound by that idea, and that you can be of any color and of any background and be an American, and being an American is bound by that idea as expressed in the Constitution, those ideas over time are also ones that are supportive of both collective and individual Jewish life. And by the way, from very early on, in the idea of Jewish self-determination in Zion. So if America really is the one nation in the world that is ultimately trying to be and do something else, then maybe, again, it's a question mark, but I'm willing at least to put it as a question mark rather than as an inevitability, that America, perhaps because of its kind of unique aspirations and background, can be the place where this will be different.
There's a lot of noise around Zionism right now. I don't have to tell you of all people that. But what is it that you think that most people, especially in the West, get fundamentally wrong about it? And do you think it's truly a misunderstanding, or is it ultimately a rejection of Jewish self-determination?
So that's basically the thing. There is a tendency to think that the anti-Zionism, and I definitely adopted the no hyphen idea, that anti-Zionism is an ideology that is designed to lead ultimately to the disappearance of Jewish life, that it is an assault on Jewish life. And the thing is that people think that Zionism is somehow related to anti-Zionism, that there is this thing, Zionism, the right of the Jewish people, no more, no less than any other people, to self-determination in their ancestral homeland. And that is a simple idea. I have a colleague, Dr. Shani Moore, he says, Zionism is normal. Anti-Zionism is insane. And yet everyone questions Zionism rather than questioning anti-Zionism. Zionism is the idea, the self-determination, the liberation of a people, in this case, the Jewish people. There are numerous liberation movements around the world of other people, leading to the idea of a nation state in an ancestral homeland. That's normal. That is the arc of the 19th and 20th and into the 21st century, again and again. The singular obsession that is called anti-Zionism is actually not related to that. It is merely the most modern, recently respectable idea of how to conduct an assault on Jewish life. So I think the biggest misconception about Zionism is just that not a lot of people understand how normal it is, how much it is of its time, and that it is really no more, no less than the right of the Jewish people to self-determination in their ancestral homeland. And you talked about going back in history. Some of the amazing things to see when you go back 100 and 150 years is how obvious it was to everyone around that the Jews are a people, and that if we move to an era of self-determination for peoples, the Jews, as much as the Slovaks and Slovenians and Macedonians have the right to self-determination, and that the only land where Jewish self-determination makes sense is the land of Israel, because these are the people of Israel. It's amazing to go back 100 and 150 years before a deliberate project of erasure and hijacking took place to see that it was, just as it was obvious to Jews, it was obvious to everyone around them.
You mentioned the hyphen debate, and I would love if you could speak to this question of whether the word anti-Zionism should or should not have a hyphen and why that is.
Before the establishment of the State of Israel, there was an intra-Jewish debate about how to be Jewish in the modern era. The modern era is massively challenging to what it means to be a Jew, to Jewish identity, and it raises a lot of questions. And there are various responses. Some of these responses, like communism, like Bundism, like assimilation, are either anti-Zionist just in the sense that they're not Zionist, or the communists, even the Bundists, are more ideologically anti-Zionist. That's with a hyphen, because what brings together all these Jews, the communists and the Bundists and the assimilationists, that they all deeply care about how to secure Jewish life. They just have different ideas, but when they are opposed to Zionism, it is not as a way to end Jewish life. It is they're opposed to Zionism because they think they have a better way for Jews to live in the modern era. So that's where the hyphen, it's a genuine debate among Jews about how to best meet the challenge of modernity. Anti-Zionism, no hyphen, is the ideology that gets deliberately developed by the Soviet Union, using, by the way, the idea of Palestine and what have come to call Palestinianism as a way to introduce the continued and politically valuable assault on Jewish life, to introduce it to the West, to the third world, once anti-Semitism got discredited. Because, as I like to joke, Russia and the Soviet Union don't get enough credit for their contribution to taking Jew hate global. They literally wrote the book, and now they've written the whole academic playbook. The Protocols of the Elders of Zion, in many ways, create the playbook of what anti-Semitism is, given scientific, journalistic, pseudo-respectability via a book to all the old kind of prejudices and ideas that were theologically before, because it was a way of saying, oh, we don't fall for this theological thing of the lower classes. Anti-Semitism was the respectable, scientifically based way to mount an assault on Jewish life. And if you look at Nazi Germany, they did not invent many of the ideas. It's the protocols. When, as a result of the Holocaust, anti-Semitism becomes, perhaps momentarily, discredited, certainly in the West, what the Soviet Union gets busy doing is created anti-Zionism as its respectable alternative, known by what have come to call the placard strategy, the equation of Israel, Zionism, Star of David, with a list of no more than 10 words. It's amazing how limited it is. Racism, apartheid, ethnic cleansing, Nazism, genocide, white supremacy, that get endlessly repeated and get laundered through institutions of prestige. That anti-Zionism is not a genuine debate among Jews how to best better Jewish life, even though, this is where the hyphen is, it tries to pretend that it is. And anti-Zionism now is a hate movement. And it's more than, people call it a hate movement. It's an assault on Jewish life where Jews live. So with a hyphen, good faith Jews debating the future among possibilities that are still open, anti-Zionism without a hyphen, an assault on Jewish life. Even when Jews participate in it, it is not in good faith. It is as a cover for the assault on Jewish life.
Now, the question that I probably get asked the most is, should we just abandon the word Zionism? People find that it's contentious, it draws so much ire, so much angst, so why not just find another word or let it go completely?
So many, many years ago, I think that's really what began my journey. A very major pollster published an essay, stop using the word Zionism, it's toxic, replace it with another word, just even say pro-Israel or something like that. And he wrote it as a pollster, I checked, the word is toxic, find something else, right? That's what a pollster does. Don't say this, say that, everything is interchangeable. Ultimately, what matters is that you can sell the product. But I remember when I read it and I thought, oh, no. You don't get it. The word Zionism did not become toxic by I just discovered, I polled and it's toxic. A lot has been invested in making it toxic, and it's not about what Israel does, because, there was this claim, still people try to claim it, that Zionism became toxic because of Israeli actions. But if that were true, you would find in testing and polling that the word Israel is much more toxic than the word Zionism, because Zionism would retain its kind of pristine element. That's the ideology that was pure and nice, but Israel ruined it. So you would see in the data that Israel is more toxic than Zionism if the issue was really Israeli actions. But what you see, of course, is the opposite. Zionism is much more toxic than Israel. And the reason is, and for many years, I would say that those who have invested in turning Zionism into a toxic word have actually understood Israel's defenses better than any engineer. They've understood that what makes Israel, and I would say the Jewish people, strong, their ability to withstand assaults, to walk with their heads held up high, is because of Zionism. So if you want to weaken the Jewish people, if you want to remove and make them defenseless so that you can proceed with this vision that utopia awaits on the other side of getting rid of the collective Jew, step one, you need to make the Jews defenseless. And Zionism, much more than the Iron Dome, is the defense, because it's what makes Jews believe in their ability to be equal, to be sovereign, to, even when they don't live in Israel, to really enjoy thriving personal and collective lives. So what was invested was in turning Zionism into a toxic word through this process of the placard strategy, which follows the rules of mass manipulation, which are simple messages, right? Zionism is racism, apartheid, ethnic cleansing, all that, endlessly repeated and laundered through institutions of prestige. These are elements of how you engage in mass manipulation. So what that pollster saw was the outcome, and that was 15 years ago, in case anyone thinks it has to do with the last 3 years. What that pollster saw was the outcome of decades of very deliberate investment in this mass manipulation of inserting this virus of the notion that the collective Jew stands between this world and utopia into the West. I'll open in parentheses because a lot of people say, why invest so much? And it's like, it's like a whole academic playbook. It's not just one book, the protocols. The Soviets created a whole playbook of academia and PhDs and references, and they exported it through these third world conferences. And why go to all that trouble, right?
Right. It's a good question, especially because the Soviet Union voted at the United Nations to create a state of Israel.
Yeah, that's when they thought we would be useful in bringing down the British Empire, which at least in our area we were. But then they made the big mistake that many have made since, to think, okay, we'll side with the Arabs, there's more of them, and we'll abandon the Jews. But yeah, for a short moment, they were with us. They developed this thing. And again, one of my favorite writers, Hussein Abu Bakr Mansour, recently wrote a tough piece called Anti-Semitism Has a Bright Future, or something around that, about really detailing the political value of anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism, no hyphen, the political value which we see in real time in undermining societies, in creating alliances that otherwise would never be possible. So just as we forget that Germany was a major kind of enemy of Tsarist Russia, they inserted the virus of anti-Semitism, and yes, it did bring Germany down. And then when the Soviet Union worked very, very assiduously to insert the upgraded, kind of mutated virus of anti-Zionism to the West and all the institutions it created, such as the United Nations. And we're seeing it. The Soviet Union is gone, but the virus it inserted into the Western body is undermining it. So this is to the question of why invest in it. But I go back, what that pollster didn't understand is that what he was merely measuring was the outcome of a deliberate effort, and that the response is not to run away. Running away means choosing another word. You're basically saying, okay, they made this word toxic, let's choose another word.
So much of this is a war of words, with terms like colonialism, apartheid, genocide being thrown around. And we Jewish people seem to come to this battle with facts, while everybody else is coming with their feelings. And it seems that they're more successful because they're coming with their feelings. So what is it that you think we need to be doing differently?
We need to expose the underlying mechanism, because when we stay at the level of, no, it's not a genocide, no, it's not apartheid, no, it's not racism, we've already succumbed to this placard strategy. And more than that, what we do, I did it, I'm still sometimes called to do it, we exhaust ourselves. I sometimes call it the Jewish tax. We take our best people, our greatest capabilities, our resources to constantly respond. And you're right, they just throw apartheid, and we now need to write a book, 10 books, 300 delegations, show. And this is why it's so effective, because it really also operates as an exhausting tax on our resources and capabilities. And that's also why, like what a lot of the kind of those who expose anti-Zionism are doing, you go to the mechanism. You expose what the mechanism does. You expose how it uses those words. You expose that those are 10 words. That's it. You expose how it launders those words through institutions of prestige, through endless repetition. And you also help them understand where this arc leads, how it destroys Jewish life, collectively, individually. And I think that's what we need to do, to work with people who are allies. There are still people, as much as we kind of go into these dark places, and I go into them sometimes, what chance do we have? The numbers are against and all that. We not only have allies, there's a lot of people out there who have a visceral sense that something is wrong.
We cannot end this show on a pessimistic note because it's Yom Ha'atzmaut. So, Einat, you are the founder of a new political party called Oz, meaning that instead of sitting on the sidelines and making commentary, you've decided to get into the arena and do the difficult, often thankless work of trying to shape the future of the State of Israel. What is your vision for a confident, modern Zionism?
It's a country that doesn't ask itself the question of why. It has a real clear sense that its very reason for being is to be the homeland for the Jewish people in their ancestral land, to enable the thriving of Jewish life in Israel and around the world. And I will say the vision that is one of the biggest elements of Oz Party is the idea that the Arab world and the Islamic world will also slowly, finally see the kind of the destruction that anti-Zionism has wrought in their own societies, and ultimately understand that It was their waste of resources, not to mention leading to the ethnic cleansing of Jews from Arab and Muslim lands, and that it is the proper way to be Arab and Muslim is to be a Zionist. And that's kind of my long-term vision for Israel.
Beautiful. Einat, thank you so very much. Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach.
That's a wrap on today's episode of Boundless Insights. Whether you've been with us from the start or are just discovering our show, we're so glad you're here. If today's conversation sparked a question, challenged your thinking, or made you shake your head, I want to hear from you. Email me at podcast@boundlessisrael.org. Your feedback gives us ideas for new topics and new guests. And if you believe these conversations matter, there are 3 ways to support the show. First, hit that follow button so you never miss an episode. Second, help us spread the word. Share an episode with friends and family, post about it, or mention it in a group chat. It really does make a difference. And third, consider supporting our work. Boundless is a nonprofit, and we rely on donors to keep the show going. You can make a gift at boundlessisrael.org/donate. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and keep the conversation going.